I'm Jacob Sadavoy.
And we are here with Sarah Trautman. And today we're going to be talking about the evolution of ABA and sort of the direction that the field has gone in. And are we fulfilling Skinner's vision? So Sarah, in your opinion, how do you feel about all of that?
Yeah, that's like the most loaded question ever. You're like,
Love
why
it.
do you take like all of the like innermost thoughts that we have right now about ABA and like, just tell us what you think about it. But obviously I'm not someone that would necessarily shy away from that. So, are we actualizing Skinner's vision? I've actually had the good fortune of being able to spend a considerable amount of time with Julie and Ernie Vargas. And Julie Vargas, for people that don't know, is B.F. Skinner's daughter. And Julie and Ernie used to be professors at Western Virginia, and of course now are retired and actually live in B.F. Skinner's home in Cambridge, which I have also had the good fortune of visiting, and I've even been able to go into the basement. Why is this important? This is important because B.F. Skinner used to have this little cot that he has in the basement. It's still there. And his basement was where he worked on all of his like interesting ideas. And so literally this place is like preserved in time. And so walking down these steps with Julie, and of course the entire time I'm terrified she's gonna like fall down the stairs. So I'm just like waiting, I'm behind her, like, okay, Julie, I got you, I can catch you. She's like, Sarah, it's fine. I do this all the time. But it's really, this like incredible glimpse into really the mind of B.F. Skinner, and it really allowed you to see that there was just so much creativity in terms of where he felt like the applications of behavior analysis could be used. And so obviously part of what I talked about in the chapter that I wrote for the book that you have asked me to write that I'm not being compensated for, which I did happily because it was so fun. Oh my gosh. Was this whole idea that really the foundations of behavior analysis were rooted in ideas of living better lives, quality of life, equality for other people, of social justice. And if you look at, I used Walden 2 as an example in the chapter that I wrote in terms of really kind of what Skinner's vision was. It was based on an interaction that he had with a friend and his friend's son that had just come home from World War II and was really kind of questioning like, okay, for so many people, during that time, it was a period for people to really kind of reflect and say, we've been in this, incredible Great War. There's been so much, death and pain, but what are we coming back to? And what is the kind of life that we'd like to lead? And what might that look like? And so Walden 2 is this obviously kind of like fictitious depiction of what a society that's really based on people, living happy lives, having choice in what they do, being healthy, and fundamentally just like really valuing a life well lived in quality. And that's been the root and the source for so many other inspirational works that have happened in our field. And we have so many people that have done great work in, acceptance and commitment therapy, looking at how can we use the tools of behavior analysis to fight issues like police discrimination, gerontology, and yet we find ourselves, almost all of us right now in the field of behavior analysis, in one population, and that is autism. And I'm no different. I ran a behavioral health company for 15 years. It was one of the most, rewarding things I've ever done. And I love this population and also people with intellectual disabilities. But I think the question that we're starting to ask ourselves now is, gosh, by focusing so heavily on, as Pat Fryman would talk about it, this one, tail on the distribution of the greater population of humans, are we selling other people short that might really benefit from applying the technology that we have in terms of solving everyday problems, in terms of solving larger societal problems? And so I think the question is, have we fully realized Skinner's vision? I mean, no, we haven't. And that's not, there's no one to blame for that. It's that this vision was so huge and was so fundamentally rooted in the idea that everyone really should have the opportunity to live a kind of life that they value and to be able to live their values in their life. And we know we're not there. I mean, for Pete's sake, why are we doing this on Zoom right now? And why are all of our panels at ABA going to be on Zoom? Because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And life how we know it has a kind of, radically shifted for almost a year. But this is what I think is the great part. just like how Skinner met that soldier, his friend's son, returning from World War II, having this like, major life event and just really wondering, who do I want to be? And what is the kind of world that I want to live in? I think right now we have this opportunity as we're, kind of slowly seeing the light coming out of COVID to really ask ourselves, who do we want to be? And what do we want to do with our work to really help allow other people to have better quality of life? I think especially to address a lot of the equity issues that we have seen laid bare and in front of all of our faces during this pandemic. So I think from my perspective, the evolution of ABA is doing a better job of being softer with potentially how we approach, how we talk about this, to get people to really kind of want to lean into our message. And that fundamentally with the things that Skinner was interested in, and so many other, kind of legends in our field, is that they want people to live well. They want people to suffer less. And I think if we can do a better job of having that be the forward facing message, and then also, of course, backing that up with like very clear, application with the technological, expertise, with the research base, I think that we have a shot at really kind of pushing our way into some of these other kind of, streams where behavior analysis could be broadly applied. Because we knew that the foundation of behavior analysis wasn't to serve persons with intellectual disabilities or autism. This is obviously a specific application, but really it's more of how do you view the world? How do you view how we interact with the world? And fundamentally, to me, it's a message of hope that none of us are in the static position. We are constantly changing. And as our environment changes, we can change too, which means that we can always do better. We can do things differently. And just because we did things one way, last year or 2 years ago, doesn't mean we can't do them a different way now. And I just think that that's just an incredibly powerful message. And it honestly makes me feel better about being a human. And if I felt like every mistake I made or, challenge that I faced was unsurmountable, like that's a pretty shitty existence. And so to me, the evolution of behavior analysis is getting in the room to have these conversations, looking at specific problems that have been deemed important by people in our culture, in our society, across cultures, and being able to talk about what we do in a way that brings people into us. I think we really need to work on using parsimony. Sometimes the best answer is the easiest answer, and really work on interventions that help, that are low response effort. Pat Fryman, again, has done some incredible writing and work, and there's many others talking about using that as a variable and to get people to be more compliant with what we want to do. But like, gosh, could you imagine if in the COVID task force, they would have asked behavior analysts, hey, fundamentally, like wearing a mask, like this is just like, it's behavior. So how can we get people to be more interested in this? Or even the whole idea of like social distancing. I was like, is it really what we're doing? That just is such a lonely message to people. Like really what we're asking them to do is physically distance themselves, but be able to be socially connected. And gosh, if behavior analysts were, involved in this messaging, might we have less politicizing of some of these things and better adherence and then reinforcement for that adherence. I don't know. It's just kind of a couple of things that I've been thinking about.
So much came up. I loved it. It's like kind of all of it, like kind of so critical and so important, and with such hope. In the present moment, awareness really jumped out at me. Like just like kind of the being able to like kind of create, like kind of we're not accomplishing the vision necessarily right now. Not necessarily, we're not, but we can, and we can change that. I think one of the barriers that I see is a competency issue in that we have supervisors training supervisees, and it's all in ASD. And then we tell people that you can't practice outside of where you're competent in. And if you're only exposed to working in populations of intellectual disability or autism, then how does somebody like kind of jump out into potentially joining a task force, even though like kind of we know there'd be such benefits for ABA to be at the table, to talk about social distancing, to talk about mask wearing, to talk about COVID relief, or like kind of anything political. Like kind of we're just not at the table.
And we aren't. And something, Michelle and I had talked about earlier is the reason that we've, so heavily focused on autism is because this has been there are jobs for the people can get paid to do this work. And I think sometimes people make this, kind of naive assumption that like, gosh, if I just really believe in something, then that's what I'm going to do with my life. And it's like, honey, there's like 1,000 other contingencies. The biggest one being your rent and mortgage, my friend, that need to be taken into consideration in terms of what you do for your work. And so, I mean, autism has made so much sense. And also, because every state in the United States, for example, has an autism insurance mandate. Depending on the state that you live in, like I'm right now in California. California also has funding available through the Department of Education, also through the Lanterman Act, which is an entitlement law in this state. So there's lots of jobs and work for people that work specifically with people with autism spectrum disorder or intellectual disability. And so part of this is it's almost kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, right? Like if we want more people to be able to obtain expertise in other areas that they would then deem themselves competent in, they need to be able to then obtain work in those areas, or else it's going to be really challenging for them to focus on that. So for example, Meg Heinicke is one of the foremost behavior analyst researchers in brain injury. And she is a professor at Sac State. She's a graduate of Western Michigan University. But we had this really dynamic conversation over the summer because I think her research is fascinating. And there's actually so much alignment between some of the protocols that have been used by her colleagues at Sac State, like Kyle Miguel, for example, in his verbal behavior research lab, and being able to really apply them to the brain injury population. So there's this like super cool crossover, but I was like, oh, okay, Meg, so this is amazing. Like, so when are you going to have your own traumatic brain injury clinic? I really want to be involved with this. I couldn't be more excited about this. And she's like, well, first we need to have people and funding sources be willing to pay for behavior analytic services. And so some of the things that she's done is she sought out on her own the opportunity to be able to be in some internships where there are multidisciplinary teams working in a brain injury center. So you're talking about, psychologist, speech therapist, occupational therapist. And she was able to seek out like some of those very few opportunities around the United States to be able to receive some more training. But for her right now, what she was saying is like, hey, I might have graduate students that are interested in this, but like, where are the jobs? And so again, I think part of this, you're only going to get the jobs if you have the research base to show the efficacy of the work, but you're only going to have the research base to show the efficacy of the work if there are jobs for people to do afterwards. And so it, to me, speaks to like concurrent efforts needing to be made. And also in terms of kind of addressing this whole competency issue, right now in terms of our certification, like your behavior analyst certification is one minimum credential. That's a minimum credential. And two, it's not a specialty. And so if I'm a board certified behavior analyst, that doesn't mean that I'm, qualified to work with any specific population, because that's not what the credential is. It said that I've, met the minimum standard in terms of being able to reflect that I understand the technical application and science of of our field, because I passed this exam. And so what I would like to continue to see happen in our field is looking at, do we add something like subspecialties, which you would find more in medical practice, for example. So if I'm seeing someone that specializes in oncology, that's not a generalist or just a, you're, around the corner, family doctor, that's an oncologist, and they've had a specific residency focused on that. They've had extensive training focused on that. And I think that that's really where I'd love to see us go. But again, if we really want to start, increasing the breadth of the type of work that we do, because right now I kind of see ABA into the autism bucket. You have the developmental disabilities bucket, you have the organizational behavior, management bucket, and like academia. And then there's like kind of little verticals here and there, but nothing that's really taken shape. And again, to me, this is, because there are not the kind of jobs and like economic support for this. So I think it would be really fascinating to look at like, what would we need in order to kind of concurrently grow all of these things? And likely that's going to be private-public partnership. It's going to be partnerships with education institutions and the public sector. And it's going to take legislative advocacy, and it's going to take some champions. Part of the reason that we have so much work in autism is because we've been championed by parents, and they're passionate. about the kids that they love, and they have been highly effective. And so it's looking at where do we find in our field, and perhaps also looking outside of our field, those next champions for what we do. And I think that we're going to have to really kind of cast a wide net and recognize that if we really want to get into some of these industries and to be able to make change with some of these problems, that's going to be us reaching across the aisle, really expanding our networks, really understanding better what the problems are that people are facing, and then being able to bring solutions to the table that make sense and aren't overly complex. And I think that all of those have to be done in concert with each other. And if we can do that, then I think that we're really on our way in order to, in allowing people to really kind of understand what we do and really having a much broader footprint on our world, using the best of behavior science.
There's never a loaded question for you. You could call it a loaded question if you want, but there isn't. No, I mean, that was
like, when you like start talking about stuff and you realize like, oh, I actually do have a lot of ideas about this because I've like thought about this so much. And so then you kind of get into like a flow state, and I'm flowing. I'm talking too much. Jacob and Michelle are like, okay, Sarah.
Fascinating. No, but really, I mean, everything you said was so spot on. And it's stuff I think that, you and I have had some conversations like throughout the process of the text and even earlier today. Jacob and I have talked at length about a lot of these things. I think like specialty tracks make sense, right? You see it in other fields, you see it in psychology, you see it in the medical field. Just reaching out and connecting with those other professions and working in multidisciplinary teams. And, Jacob and I were talking about this earlier. When you talk about a multidisciplinary team, everyone's like, sure, I do that, OT, PT, speech. No, we're talking about finance, we're talking about government, we're talking about healthcare, and really, coming at it, I think as behavior analysts, sometimes because of the way we've sort of been brought up through the educational system and working in schools and working in these different environments, we're kind of the last resort, right? Like a lot of times we come in and we're like, okay, we're here, right? We've got the magic wand. We're going to fix the problem.
But it's in a crisis. It's a crisis scenario. And if it weren't for the crisis, we would not be the first call. Yeah.
Right. So I think coming at this, like what was showing up for me is when we're reaching out to these other people, just kind of saying, hey, I have this science, right? Like I have this background that I think can really help, but I need to learn about what you're doing and what the barriers are. And then here's what I can offer as a solution. And it has to be parsimonious. Like it cannot just, you can't walk in there with a binder behavior plan, for a legislator. They're going to be like, what in the world is this? And
also anyone that's good at legislation knows that you're never going to go to the legislature. Where you're going to go is to their aides. And those are the people that move mountains. And so even having that kind of understanding in context for like, who is your audience, but who's really your audience? And then where are their reinforcers?
Right. Who are the doers? Who are the change makers and the stakeholders? All such really important, valuable information. I definitely think this sheds so much light on where the gaps are, where they need to be filled. And we just have to figure it out. We have to figure out how to fill it. We were talking with Tom Sabo earlier this week, last week. I don't even remember anymore. It's all been a Monday.
Thursday.
Exactly. And it came up in conversation with Tom, like this isn't just about like having the conversation anymore. This is a call to action, and I think these are all like action, committed actions that we need to make, right? Living in our values, being in the here and now and just doing it, figuring it out, right? Going online, researching it, like we do that for everything else. So why not this? So powerful. I'm just like chills head to toe.
Good. I'm chilled, but that's because it's cold in here and I'm in a construction zone. It's literally like 50 degrees. Before this interview, I'm not kidding. I'm going to show you the puffy coat I had on. This coat in California in January. And I was like, honestly, I'm a little bad. I have to take it off to talk to you guys, but I wanted to be presentable. So I made that choice.
Thank you very much.
Just keeping it real. You're welcome.
Fantastic. Is there is there anything that you want to share about like kind of what you've been up to, things that are coming up on the horizon that you're excited about, that our audience might want to hear about? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what have I been up to? So many things. Every time I get a little older, I'm just like, Sarah, you're doing too many projects, but I realize I just have so much energy. The major project that I have been working on, I don't know if you've seen this or not, is a membership organization for women and non-binary individuals whose whole purpose is using the best of behavioral science to help the members that are part of our community live their best lives, in both personally and professionally. Because I think so often we see different membership organizations, whether it's like Entrepreneurs International or moms groups or whatever, but they aren't really looking holistically at who we are and understanding that there's no way to kind of like silo what you do professionally and silo who you are personally, that they intersect. And behavioral science has a lot of wonderful tools that can be used to help people live better lives holistically. And that's what we're really into. I mean, honestly, it's a massive dissemination exercise. And we're doing what I call ABA light. We're trying to lean in with people using things like the science of gratitude. And that's borrowing more from psychology than it does from applied behavior analysis, but looking at like what are the actual scientific effects of gratitude. And then also for our individuals understanding, again, when it comes to jobs, like if you want to do something that you love and you want to get paid to do it, how do you do that? Should you start a business? Should you be working for someone else? If you want to obtain a leadership position, what are the type of skills that you need to show, regardless of if you're a behavior analyst or not, that will likely get you that promotion? Understanding that authentic connection, and truly understanding and seeing other people is the key to living a good life, both professionally and personally. And so we have very specific values that we've identified. We are really excited about what we're doing, and we are called Defy Community. So I welcome everybody to
I love it.
check. Oh yeah, this has been like this
Fantastic.
love. Yeah, we have created this community in 3 months. We have over 200 members right now. We have tons of really fun activities planned. We're doing some collaborations, both again within behavior analysis and outside of this. This is not a behavior analytic organization per se. It's basically saying that like, hey, we have these tools in behavior science. We think that we can, share them in a way that's going to be palatable to this, especially early career and mid-career women and non-binary individuals. And we want to help you live a better life. And so, let's come join us and figure out how to do this together. And it's just been really fun.
So we should be wrapping up, but can I ask one follow-up question?
Yes.
Lovely. Great. So you had mentioned soft skills before, and what you're creating, I think it's going to speak to a lot of the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're living it, you're following your values, and you're creating something outside of working with the autistic population. Can you talk about some of the skills that you have or that you have used to kind of help you in this situation? And I guess also how, like, it's hard to get to the table, right? But once you're at the table, you can get kicked out of the table if you don't have like kind of those soft skills. So what are those soft skills that you think are essential for a project that you're undertaking to be successful?
Ooh, that's a really good question, Jacob. Okay, because I've had to think about this a lot. First and foremost, I'm always interested in leaning into what people have to say and their perspectives and really understanding. And again, I hate to I feel like it's ad nauseum Pat Fryman, but like I'm obsessed with him. He's like a mentor to me and I love him so much, but really being willing to approach others by having a circumstantial view of behavior. So when you hear things that, maybe an opinion someone has that kind of doesn't make sense to you, or gosh, this seems divisive. I mean, especially in our current political culture, or wow, why would you think this way about certain individuals that you don't know? Instead of kind of jumping down their throats, which I think as behavior analysts, we've done a spectacular job of alienating ourselves in conversations by shoving our science so deep down someone's throat that in fact they just vomit it up and then don't think about it anymore. But being curious, being willing to listen, and then also really understanding, again, that's like we're governed by like, what's the function? What is this person trying to get at? How can I understand that? And if we're here and I want to get here, how can I systematically work with them, pair myself as a reinforcer, make sure that they're not coming into, contact with punishment as it relates to working with me. Again, being willing sometimes to listen more than speak. Those are things that have been really important to me, to be able to get seats at those tables that traditionally might not be reserved for people like me or by behavior analysts. And then also really understanding and seeing value, like real true value in some works that other people are doing that may not totally be aligned with behavior analysis, but it's not hurting anyone. And so like pick your battles. Matt Broadhead has written some great articles in terms of working in IEP teams, for example. And he's like, if no one likes you, no one is going to be interested in doing the things that you say for them to do. And so that likability factor, I mean, like there's research to show like what's the number one variable associated with efficacy, just like in the general public, it's likability. And so I think that likability and those listening skills and being able to have curiosity with perspectives that you don't necessarily understand, and then being able to really pair yourselves as a reinforcer with others, it's all basic behavior stuff. But we often, we apply that to the populations that we work with. We don't want to apply it to ourselves. And I think fundamentally for me, as much as I have like not enjoyed aging, I deeply appreciate the wisdom and perspective that I've gained, that life is a lot more complicated than everyone thinks. Everyone is going through something. And so I think having that compassion for others, even when they say stuff that's mean or that I think is horrible, and just looking at, okay, what's the function it's serving? What might their circumstances be that have really kind of, in the reinforcement history been that has really kind of led them to be who they are today? And can I have an impact in this? And so how do I do it in the way that's, compassionate and kind? And that's, that's been really helpful for me. Likability, humor. I'm always in inappropriate jokes. I mean, I definitely tried to make it like PG for this conversation. But that's how, that's how you get to the table, is that relationship development and networking. And how you stay at the table is, really delivering value, being viewed as a reinforcer, and really having understanding and listening to what the needs are, and then being able to respond to them appropriately.
You make it sound so easy.
It's a lifelong. It is a lifelong.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sarah, thank you so much. This is fantastic. And I don't want to keep you any longer because I know you want to put on your coat.
It's cold. It's such a terrible situation. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, do I wear mittens and just like keep my hands down? But I'm like quarter Italian. So like I'm a hand talker. So I can't do that. I have to be able to talk with my hands. It's been a real struggle.
You did it gracefully. Thank you. No, seriously, this was amazing. Always a wealth of knowledge, always such great perspective, always a nice dose of humor. Yeah, I mean, definitely people, that are listening, please check out Defy. Follow Sarah. She's always got some great posts, some great lipstick shades. She's airing on Facebook, and stay tuned for more.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Do like do we all wave together, or do we do like the witty banter that they do?
We can do like a curtsy.
Yeah.